Welcome to the Calm Analysts channel. I'm Boris Tiesenghausen. July 6th. Here are the main news stories at this moment. Once again, another terrorist act by the Russian Federation, a massive shelling of Ukraine. The main strike today hit Kyiv, just like a few days ago. There were direct hits on apartment buildings, unfortunately. There are dead and wounded in Kyiv, 13 killed, more than 60 injured. As a result of this attack, an entire family was killed, a son, mother, and father. Their bodies were found in the entrance of an apartment building in the Podilsky district. My condolences to those who lost loved ones today, and I wish a speedy recovery to those who were injured. Now I'll show you a photo. These are military-industrial complex targets, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense. Take a look. This is how they see military targets in Ukraine. In total, last night, Russia launched 68 missiles and 351 drones at Ukraine. Putin is a terrorist and a sick degenerate. I think that no sane person on this earth has any doubts about that anymore. There is no doubt about it. For 5 years now, he hasn't been able to get out of this war, and because of that, he strikes Ukrainian homes with even more fury. Give me what I want, or I'll kill more civilians. So basically, what is he trying to show with these strikes now? A spoiled, cowardly, sick loser, a psychopath? But, looking a bit ahead, I'll tell you that today there will also be some very good news. Today, our armed forces struck targets that, until now, we hadn't been able to reach. Here is what was hit. What was struck today will significantly affect upcoming events and the war as a whole. And also, our soldiers punished those who launched ballistic missiles at Ukraine today, but more on that a bit later. Ukraine continues to strike at the most sensitive points of the Russian Federation. Now I will show you historic footage. This is the Omsk Oil Refinery hit by Ukraine's defense forces. 2,500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border in a straight line. Look, the Omsk Oil Refinery is burning for the first time, and I hope not for the last. Let me remind you, this is the largest oil refinery in Russia. With a capacity of 21 million tons of oil per year, that's about 6% of all oil refining in the Russian Federation. It produces gasoline, diesel fuel, aviation kerosene, and other petroleum products. In general, until now, the Omsk Oil Refinery remained the only largest strategic refinery in Russia that had not been hit. That's it, as they say, they finally cracked open this tsar of refineries. But that's not all. Frankly, there hasn't been such a fruitful day as today in a long time. By the way, friends, we'll get to the rest of the harvest in a moment, but for now, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important. We're fighting against Putin's propaganda. Let's do it together. So make sure to subscribe. In the Sea of Azov, 2 tankers carrying gasoline, which were traveling from Taganrog to Crimea, have been hit. And on land, 2 S-400 Triumph air defense systems have also been destroyed. An oil depot in Kirk is on fire. The NIBO-U radar station has been hit, and this is far from a complete list of what our armed forces have taken out today. These 2 tankers from the Shadow Fleet were transporting fuel across the Sea of Azov, specifically from Taganrog to Crimea. Remember Putin spoke about this recently? He said, "We'll transport it there by sea now, we'll deliver it." He probably didn't know that the ferry had already been destroyed, but when he was informed, he said, "Let's use tankers instead." So 2 tankers set off, each carrying about 7,000 tons of fuel. That's about 200 rail tank cars in each one. That's quite a lot. In short, they decided to deliver the fuel by sea, but it didn't work out. Plus today our drones added to the oil terminal in Kerch, which is one of the largest oil terminals in Crimea. I think it might soon be the last one left, designed for the storage and transshipment of petroleum products. Well, basically they had to dump them somewhere else, but now this terminal is burning again and again. In general, it will soon be completely wiped out, just like I think the oil depot in Feodosia. But that's not all. Here are these 2 S-400 launchers. This is the Triumph system. These are exactly the launchers that were firing ballistic missiles at Ukraine. One was in a firing position in the Bryansk region, and the other was hiding in a shelter in Crimea. The launchers were destroyed. And also the NIBO-U radar station in Crimea. Another hole has been made in Crimea's air defense. Now let's watch a great video showing how our drones took out all these targets. Take a look.
Повітряна тривога Саратов потруси, нехай гримить в Тамбові, Рязані та Ростові. Як до Москви дістанешся, то нахуй рознеси. Дехто каже, що це гріх і так не треба. Гнів та розпач можуть карму зіпсувати. Бачу сльози, чути стогін аж до неба. За це все к***ви мають поздихать. Повітряна тривога, лети до Таганрога, влупи як слід Вороніж і Курськом закуси. Є Лавову поштрикай, Новгород великий, як до Москви дістанешся, то нахуй рознеси.
To be continued. Well, how do you like that, you mangy scum? Do you enjoy it? And soon Crimea will be cleared of military facilities. Completely. The occupiers will be fleeing from there so fast their heels will be flashing. But that's not all. Today, an event occurred that will soon come back to haunt Muscovites, and they'll remember it for a very long time. A strike was also carried out on the Yaroslavl Oil Refinery. Today, why will this come back to haunt Muscovites, and not just Muscovites, by the way? Because if we're talking about the Moscow region, the situation there looks very interesting right now. That is, Moscow has traditionally been supplied by 4 major oil refineries. The Moscow Oil Refinery in Kapotnya was taken out. That's it. Production has been halted until next year, at the very least. The Ryazan Oil Refinery, also one of the largest plants in Russia with a capacity of 17 million tons, has been taken out and has been shut down since May 15th. The Kyiv Oil Refinery, the largest plant in the northwest of Russia with a capacity of 18 million tons, has also been completely shut down after the strikes. And so we still had the Yaroslavl Oil Refinery, Slavneft, with a capacity of 15 million tons, which was operating at a quarter of its capacity after the strikes. But I think that after today's strikes, it will completely cease operations. And there is also a 5th shadow reserve for Moscow, Norsy, Kshtovo, Nizhny Novgorod region, which was actually operating in a sort of semi-functional state. Our drones visited it as well, just recently. On July 2nd, you see they've cut everything out. The oil refineries around Moscow. I think they are all shut down now. Well, today they hit the Yaroslavl refinery as well, so I think that last quarter it was supplying is now gone too. But in reality, Moscow's supply system has already switched to a kind of manual control mode, meaning the fuel is being delivered by roundabout routes. Somehow through various channels with exchange flows, but definitely not according to the original plan. All this means that the real threshold of collapse in Moscow is right here. It's already upon us. One more strike or even a couple of small hits and that's it. Muscovites are done for. If the Yaroslavl refinery stops, then for the first time in decades, Moscow will face not just shortages, but a real fuel famine within the boundaries of the MKAD. I think that would be wonderful. I think maybe that's what Volodymyr Zelensky meant when he said that only the island of Moscow can stop Putin. Well, let's see. Now, I think it's clear why Putin is furious and attacking Ukraine with such ferocity. But let's take a look at what's been happening lately. That is, Putin is staging some kind of theatrical performances with fake captures of Ukrainian cities. By the way, today's strike is probably timed to coincide with tomorrow's NATO summit, also for the main audience. For Donald Trump, this strike is like, look, Trump, I can still do a lot. I'm hitting here. I'll show everyone now. But that's not how it works. But if you analyze everything as a whole, all the events together, what is the real reason Putin staged this theatrical show with the supposed capture and non-capture of Kostiantynivka? For whom? For Trump. That is, to influence Trump so that he, in turn, put pressure on Ukraine, force them to make concessions to that bold Toranchoks. Let's just try now, to look at everything from above without emotions, with a sort of helicopter view. It's very difficult to do without emotions after a night like this, but let's try anyway. So first of all, if you, Putin, have a strong position, if you're advancing on all fronts, as you claim everywhere, then why do you even need any negotiations at all? Why do you need all these humiliations in Anchorage? You just keep advancing until you achieve your goal. Isn't that right? Second, this so-called advance on all fronts collapses instantly, literally. on one well-known fact. So, if Putin is always advancing on all fronts, let's look at where Russian troops were 4 years ago and where they are now. How exactly are they advancing on all fronts? If 4 years ago they were near Kyiv, they had occupied Kherson, in which direction are they advancing? Or should we then admit that before this, there was first a great retreat on all fronts? And thirdly, Crimea. 4 years ago, the occupiers in Crimea were celebrating and didn't even know what the sound of a drone or a missile was. And now they're wondering how to hold on to Crimea? They're conducting drills to repel an amphibious landing. The situation with Crimea has worsened many times over, and it just keeps getting worse. But we'll talk about that a bit later as well. And fourth, another important fact, 4 years ago, all Russian oil refineries were intact. There was no looming threat of a fuel collapse over Russia. In other words, there was no risk of the harvest being disrupted, and as a result, possible famine. None of that existed. Let me emphasize, all of Russia is sinking into a fuel crisis, not just the border regions or some isolated areas. I could go on listing them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I think that's enough to understand that everything is not going according to plan at all. In other words, no matter how hard Putin tries to claim that he has taken some place like Kostiantynivka or Little Kostiantynivka, it doesn't overshadow what's happening right now. That's the situation overall. I'm not saying that the situation has improved significantly for Ukraine or improved at all, but the Russians were shelling us then and they're still shelling us now. For us in this regard, nothing has really changed much. The only thing is we've become much better at shooting down Shaheds and cruise missiles. Unfortunately, we have major problems with ballistic missiles. A lot depends on supplies from our partners, but even if those supplies come, it won't be very soon. But for the Russians, everything has changed very seriously for the worse, and it's going to get even worse. Just look at what happened in a single day. That's why Putin is striking our residential buildings with such ferocity. And, here's a small digression. Ethical, it's probably moral. I think that probably, especially after attacks like today, many of you would like to see rockets and drones hitting neighborhoods in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, so that Russians could experience for themselves, in quotation marks, of course, all the delights of the war they brought to us. I've already said this and I'll repeat it again. As paradoxical as it may seem, Putin would also like our rockets and drones to strike. To hit Moscow neighborhoods, to hit Russians' homes anywhere, just not at oil refineries, not at military factories, because Putin doesn't care about Russians at all. He couldn't care less. They're expendable material. He would be happy if we were hitting Russian homes with our rockets and drones. He doesn't care about Russians, but he does care about oil refineries and factories. Sometimes I even feel that Putin, that's exactly the scenario they're provoking us into. An exchange of strikes on residential neighborhoods. As if to say, look, I'm hitting your homes, go ahead, strike Moscow homes, strike St. Petersburg homes, go ahead. Just forget about the oil refineries, forget about Crimea, don't look there. Our righteous anger and thirst for revenge are absolutely understandable and justified. But the way to finish off that Botoxed scumbag is precisely by striking oil refineries and the military-industrial complex. That's exactly what our armed forces are doing. And in every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today, we are continuing to raise funds for electronic warfare equipment to protect our assault troops from the 33rd Assault Regiment. They are currently defending the Zaporizhzhia direction. Our assault troops are the first to meet the enemy and destroy them right there. The soldiers need electronic warfare equipment to protect themselves from Russian drones. They need vehicle-mounted EW systems. They need trench EW systems and individual EW devices to protect our infantry and assault troops. The soldiers have recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
Ми бійці 33-го окремого штурмового полку, що воює зараз на Запорізькому напрямку. Сьогодні на фронті технології змінюються дуже швидко. Противник активно використовує FPV та розвідувальні дрони, НРК. Тому нам постійно доводиться адаптуватися та посилювати захист. Одним з найефективніших рішень є засоби радіоелектронної боротьби, які дозволяють подавляти сигнали керування дронами та захищати бійців та техніку. Звертаємося по допомогу до спільноти Бориса Тізенгаузена. Штурмовикам потрібні окопний реп, автомобільний реп та індивідуальний реп для захисту бійців та техніки. Кожен такий засіб – це шанс зберегти життя воїнів та техніку. Дякуємо всім і кожному. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There is Mono, Privat, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. There is a QR code in the corner. That's for those watching me on other channels. The QR code also always leads to the fundraiser, and we have just a little bit left, less than a quarter, to close this fundraiser. Let's all come together, keep up the pace, and help our assault troops. Your donation directly saves the lives of our defenders. Remember that. And in every episode, I thank you personally, both from myself and from the hundreds of warriors you have already helped. You are simply incredible. But that's not all. In addition to the crucial oil refineries 1 and 2, today a whole series of other facilities were also hit on the territory of the Russian Federation. Now the Russian Ministry of Defense is already clucking and screaming, "We'll get our revenge," and so on. So today Novatek Ust-Luga was also hit. Oil refinery, which is located in the Leningrad region right there at the export port. By the way, this is one of the largest gas condensate processing complexes in Russia. It also produces light petroleum products, gasoline, diesel, naphtha, and so on. So a third oil refinery was also hit today. And you know, they also hit the permanent base of the 26th Missile Brigade near the city of Luga. That's also in the Leningrad region. These are the ones who were covering that oil refinery. At the same time, part of the air defense facilities was also taken out. Next time, Luga will get even more. But that's not all yet. In occupied Crimea, there was a massive blackout after drones arrived during the night. All these days since the beginning of the month, our drones have been attacking electrical substations. At least 10 substations are attacked in a single night, and now we have the first serious results. Without electricity supply, Sevastopol, Simferopol, the southern coast of Crimea were left without power. Then Kremenergo announced that there would be mass outages in all cities and districts of the occupied peninsula. Well, what can you do, Russia? As soon as you barged into Crimea, you started actively militarizing it. You wanted demilitarization, well, here you go, sign for it. Nevertheless, Crimea is becoming less and less suitable as a staging ground for any military operations of the Russian Federation. I think that soon that southern group will start crawling like little cockroaches into Crimea. Well, whether they manage to escape before the bridge is blown up, that's the question. That's the intrigue. Let me remind you once again, tomorrow the NATO summit starts in Ankara. For us, it's clear that one of the key topics will be the possibility of obtaining those very interceptor missiles, but Europe produces far too few of them. Plus, there's also Trump used up all the stockpiles with the war in Iran. In general, look at how we are approaching this summit, which, by the way, is no less important for the Russians, especially in the context of trying by any means to dissuade the West and Trump to continue helping Ukraine. That is, a day before the summit, Putin strikes Kyiv with missiles, destroys homes, and kills 13 people. Before that, just a few days earlier, he kills 30 people with missiles. Between these events, he boasts about being a hero who supposedly captured Kostiantynivka. But in reality, that's not the case. Our soldiers recorded videos from different locations in Kostiantynivka and Plyasheva Shlyapa. They said he can follow the Russian warship. So those were the cards Putin had to play. Meanwhile, for the first time, Ukraine reaches the largest Russian oil refinery, takes out 2 more refineries, cutting Moscow off from fuel. It severely cuts off power to Crimea and destroys several dozen of the most important targets. So who holds the cards before the summit? In other words, I don't think Putin expected things to turn out this way. Honestly, the treachery and vileness. The thing about this shelling was that it was quite unexpected. Well, we thought since there was shelling recently, they probably need some time to prepare again. But then, at 1:30 in the morning today, the first ballistic missiles and zircons were launched. At this point, you start to sense deep down that this won't be the end. There was a temptation after the first wave of ballistic missiles. Today you might think there's no need to go to the shelter because it's ballistic missiles coming in. You don't have time to run anywhere to the shelter, it just hits and that's it. Just not here. When the first wave flew by today, there was a feeling that there would be more. And we went to the shelter and it was the right decision. So while that Botox maniac is poring over his maps, look, it turns out he's being set up by his own people. Following the Russian Ministry of Defense, the collaborator Pushilin also indirectly confirmed Putin's lies. That is, he stated that Kostiantynivka, it turns out, is still not under Russian control. I quote, they're carrying out a mop-up operation in Kostiantynivka. That's what this Pushilin said. Seriously? A mop-up operation? But Putin said it was completely under control. And then there will be a re-mop-up operation. A mop-up operation on a string, on a rope. How is it possible that Putin declares full control, and the next morning the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation announces that fighting is still ongoing for Kostiantynivka? Pushilin is talking about some kind of mop-up operations. What, they don't coordinate their versions over there? I also wanted to draw your attention to something. Today I saw the wording from the Russian Ministry of Defense, those ghouls, may they all burn in hell. So look at the wording they use. The armed forces of the Russian Federation, in response to attacks on Kyiv, carried out a massive strike there. But how can it be in response? If you were the ones who started the war first, shelled Ukraine for a long time with impunity and didn't get a just response for it, what kind of response? How is it in response if you were the first to come here and start shelling us? In response? What response? Degenerates. I understand that in the 5th year of the full-scale war, Russians might be shocked by Ukraine's response. And I hope that this response will come soon. Each time it will be harsher, larger in scale, and more painful. Well, as they say, Russians stock up on fuel cans, although it seems to me you might not even need to anymore. There's no gasoline, but hang in there, and there won't be any. There won't be any bread later, no food, there will be nothing. You can thank that bold scum for it. Well, as for you, friends, take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel, don't forget. And let's help our assault troops from the 33rd Regiment. We're just a little bit away from closing the fundraiser. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.